Hey Sindre, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Cool. I'm good. How are you?
All is well. I just had a Tine ris lunch with strawberry taste. It was good. Let's see. Let me just paste in another question from the Discord. So before we get started, should we add any other topics? Just to keep it short, we don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah.
So now's the chance to add any topics. So we can take more topics later, but it would be nice to just get it down and have everything so we can go through it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm guessing the topics are going to come later.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Anything we should know about the new version?
The new version in general, like the next version, or?
Well, didn't 133 just roll out?
Yeah, it was basically just a bug fix to get rid of the crashing issue on 30 to 130 to 132, I think. It should have solved the most pressing issue at least. So there will be another update again quite soon. I'm trying to get it out, but the remaining 5% is always like 50% of the job. So yeah. Cool.
VS Code. I was going to mention VS Code, Sindre. See how you're getting on with that. Is that going to be after the bug fixing?
Yeah. So the VS Code, the new VS Code tooling, along with the new version of Imba, which just has fixes for the tooling essentially, is the next thing, and it's coming any day. I just stumble into some final problems when I try to just wrap it up. So that's coming, and other bugs and features and stuff I will do after that. But right now I'm just trying to push out the new tooling.
Will it be able to recognize symbols that were introduced via assignments to global this?
What did you mean? Could you repeat that?
Will the new VS Code plugin be able to recognize symbols that are introduced by assigning to global this?
It will at least be able to ignore the problems, if that's what you're referring to, like ignore the squiggly lines that come from the TypeScript analyzer. Yeah, it will be able to remove that. Ideally, like the refactoring I've done now is the beginning of something where we could actually support it with autocompletion as well eventually. But extending global this and extending classes in general is not something that the TypeScript tooling is really fond of. So to do that in a regular TypeScript or JavaScript project, you do need to create like a TS declaration file and extend the global object and define your properties there. But we should be able to like behind the scenes generate these type declaration files and mix them into the TypeScript language server. So yeah, eventually it should work with autocomplete as well. But to be honest, like even if the new tooling is better, it's definitely better than what we have now. There are still glaring issues with it, especially when it comes to caching. If you install a new node module in the project, if you rename some weird file, if you edit some TypeScript or JavaScript file that you depend on, there are so many cases where we don't reliably prune the cache, so where the autocompletions will eventually like mess up, or you won't be able to autocomplete a import from a file that wasn't there when the project was opened. There are so many issues with that. So after I push this version, I am looking into actually using, instead of using the TypeScript language service API, moving over to using a modified version of TS server, which is basically a wrapper around the TypeScript language service that also includes all sorts of caching and file watching and pruning, and yeah, but that will take even more time. So before that, I guess there are more pressing things to fix there. So
I don't know how hard this is for the next plugin release, but I'm wondering if we can have some options to turn on and off, like hinting and errors on the plugin without getting rid of the syntax highlighting, in case I want to make some like promo videos and stuff.
Yeah, I think it should be possible. It's already much better now in that it does not. It shows way fewer errors that aren't really errors, because that was a problem before. It's still sort of an issue, so we should have some options to hide it completely, and to possibly even to add custom rules for like removing certain errors.
I can always like just change the color of error underlines to match the background, and you won't see them. But at least like hinting, like sometimes I want to turn off hints so that it's cleaner for a screenshot.
With hints, do you mean you want to turn off auto completions, or do you just want to turn off the squiggly lines, like warnings and errors?
I mean, it would be good to be able to toggle both of them independently. Just so that if there's any little quirks in the error handling and I'm making something very specific for a demo, then I can turn it off, and just to make sure it looks good.
Yeah, we can add that as an option. At the same time, we should really get to the point where it shouldn't ever show any squiggly warning or error if it isn't an error, because that's the major problem as I see it now with the current tooling, is that for many projects you get a ton of errors and warnings, so you don't really pay attention to them at all. It's just some squiggly lines that's cluttering your code files. So
that's errors is not my main issue. I just want to be able to toggle the auto completion, turn that off, so that when I'm typing and showing the simplicity of the Imba syntax, not cluttered by the auto completion.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Like, so maybe you should write this down, Alexander. So for the tooling, add options for removing diagnostics altogether, like hiding any sort of errors and warnings, and also add option for disabling auto completions. Are there any other obvious options we do want, Eric, that you can come up with?
That's what I can think of right now.
Yeah, cool.
And I tried it works great, so good job on that.
Yeah, and you can just add them later if the document should be editable.
Yeah,
so
sure. Cool. Do we have any other, like, ideally, as always, I should have gotten to the point now where the new tooling was released so that we can actually go through that and spend some time in the meeting on that. But since that's still kind of chaotic, do we have any other important issues? So the old mobile browser, Eric, I'm not sure if you managed to test it on Browser Stack, but that specific browser you mentioned the last time is one of the very few premium things, like where you actually need a premium version of Browser Stack, and I just haven't gone around to ordering that. So if there are no browsers in the free versions that works with it, I will definitely just purchase a plan and try it out.
Yeah, I think it's like $27 for 1 month. I don't know if that.
No, it's no problem. It was just, it stopped me at that time because I was just like, yeah, I'll continue with other stuff. But yeah.
Mobile device. Get an actual mobile device to test on, you have to pay the membership.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah. Could Imba display some sort of a message if it's loaded on an old browser that can't handle it? I noticed on an older version of Safari, I tried to load the Imba site and absolutely nothing showed up on the screen. So it would be nice if the server could just display a little message, please upgrade your browser to whatever is the lowest version of that browser that Imba supports.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if the reason it doesn't work is something like you don't support ESM modules at all, then it's easy enough, and then you can do it yourself by just having I don't remember the name, like it's no script, no module, something tag, and add it yourself. It's kind of difficult if the problem is that the Imba project actually crashes when you load it in the browser. It's kind of difficult, I think, to automatically do that, because then we would have to essentially like wrap all the code in a try catch, or add a listener for errors in the browser, and then guess whether or not that's an error in your application or if it's due to compatibility. But if we actually get a better overview of what specific features we do need for Imba to work, then sure, we could actually add a better way to check for those features and then log out something if it doesn't work. But I suspect the reason, as I said, is actually something more like it's, yeah, some sort of weird thing that we don't support, or something that just crashes where we could just rewrite the library to work around that. So I can try to, right after this meeting, I can try to just order Go Premium on BrowserStack and try to get to the bottom of it.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Something I've been hearing in the chat is like static generation.
Yeah. So static generation, as I said the last time, it's definitely possible. It's just that right now I don't have time to focus on it, and I probably won't for quite some time.
I guess if you talked about it already, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I should probably apologize, Sindra, for putting the question, and it's a little bit the same as last week. It's, for me, it's more just like an identity of Imba long-term thing. It's like when all the bugs and the important stuff, and when time allows down the line, I just think it'd be great to have like a bit more hand-holding with, Imba's like such a cool language, and it's so cool at prototyping, and it works for me great in like client-side rendering, like but like as soon as you want to do something maybe with server or with static or a website, or it would just be so cool to get there, like to have a plan to maybe like go do like a very, very minimal version of something like a Next or a SAP or a SvelteKit thing, or just to have like, hey, this is how you deploy apps, and but I get that you can got time, and it was more just whether or not that's something that was maybe on the roadmap at some point.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we should, both for static apps, but also for the regular SPAs and client-side apps, we should definitely have a more opinionated way of building things, like directory structure, how we actually export things, like a template for exporting an SPA to GitHub pages, for exporting a static page to GitHub pages, which definitely, have more of that. But I guess for something like a static site generator, I think it would still be kind of a project around Imba, just like Nuxt is a static generator around Vue and Sapper around Svelte and so on. So hopefully we could get it to a point where someone else could maybe take responsibility for that part, and where I could chip in. That would be ideal.
Having to, sorry, is that like maybe a few people have talked about in the comments, maybe being like the Imba compiler, and like there's some sort of internals that you can use the Imba compiler to, if someone sort of figures out how the Imba compiler works, then they can figure out how to do a structure around that, make a script. I guess it's going to come down to sort of compiling files in a directory into something, right?
Yeah, and I'm so, at least without really thinking a lot about it, and without really looking deeply into how Nuxt and all these others do it, for a static site generator, I actually don't even think you would play too much around with the compiler itself. I would rather think that you create, because you define these tags and in various files, and I think the generator itself would probably be a tiny script that indexes the files, creates maybe some like wrapper glue code around it, and then compiles that whole bundle, runs it as a node server, and then runs through the actual URLs that it's generated or that it knows it should visit, and then actually just save the output from all these calls to the node server as static files somewhere. So I think it's even, so I don't think we need to integrate that much into the actual compiler itself, hopefully.
Okay.
But obviously you will need to know quite a lot about the Imba internals. So that's still probably a long way for most.
Compilation, there are some tools that want output to be a single file, and the Imba compiles into a directory because, for obvious reasons, it can compile CSS and JavaScript. I was wondering if there's a way to make a command in the CLI to compile separately, like to have one command to output CSS and one to output JavaScript independently. I don't know if that's possible.
So you could, that should be possible. In what cases would you want to compile the CSS independently? Is it where you actually just use Imba in some projects for CSS, or is it where you just want some?
Well, that would be a workaround for me for a tool that I'm using that wants to work with a compiled file, not a compiled directory. And
but I guess when you compile, when you build a project to a folder, there are files inside of that. So if the directory doesn't change and the name of the file didn't change, would that be close enough, or is it?
I could try to get in touch with the people of that tool to see if they could make it work with accepting a directory, but right now they only accept a file. They want the command because it runs the command itself to compile a file, and then it will use that compiled file, but it won't work if the command compiles a directory. It's expecting like input -o, like output, and then an output directory or an output file name. And then it will take that file name and continue on with some work. But the Imba output a directory and doesn't know what to do with it. So I'm assuming that there might be other tools out there that might work with output commands the same way. And it would be nice to kind of compile, like a workaround for me would be to compile them separately. So I can be like, here, do that with the Java file, and do it also with a CSS file independently.
But ideally, you would want a single file that actually includes both the CSS and the JavaScript, or?
Well, I think this tool wants it wants them separate. Like it like when it will compile the output when the file changes and then use it. I guess it's not expecting to have both CSS and JavaScript to be coming out of a single language. So I would make two commands that run simultaneously to get the CSS outputting to its own file, and it will know what to do with that, and then to create a JavaScript file, and then it will take that and know what to do with it.
Yeah.
This sounds very specific. Maybe you can open up a GitHub issue, Eric.
I think I did already.
You did? What's the issue number or the name?
Let's see. I can't remember.
Nice. We're 10 people in the meeting today. This is a record.
I think it's 536. But that was just like, it would be nice with some more information in that issue about what you actually need. It is definitely possible, but the whole challenge here is that since the Imba builder, the Imba bundler actually discovers asset references and makes sure to generate those unique assets and link everything together, there are many questions, like if you actually reference an image in your CSS file, it doesn't make that much sense to only output the CSS, because the CSS will then not reference any image, like you will need to also output an image in some location and add that reference from the CSS file. So for some specific cases,
Maybe it's super specific, but it's a web development build tool. Yeah, I'll just make the issue more detailed rather than me
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah, it's very sparse. There's not really that much information. It would be nice with the link to the tool.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you guys heard of Pre-Pros or CodeKit, that they, like, before people really knew how to use like NPM and all that stuff, like we used that for compiling SAS and compiling. And I thought it'd be nice to set up a little workflow with that people can just download to run with Pre-Pros, and it would make a live server and it would run an Imba project. I was tinkering with that, and then I found that it won't work with the tool. But I could also talk to them and be like, hey, how about you make it work with a directory output rather than single file output? Maybe they can.
Can you not wrap a script around it?
Maybe I'm not good enough to do that myself.
but I'm not sure.
That would maybe be the easiest one. You just wrap a script around it and you just discard all the generated files that are not meaningful for you.
So for me, it kind of looks like, looking at Pre-Pros now, it kind of looks like it might be challenging to make it work, in the sense that Pre-Pros kind of is a competing tool. It looks like it tries to do some of the same things, that it's a bundler with a nice UX wrapped around it, isn't it? If it takes care of even bundling JavaScript, things like that.
What I'm using it for is to create like I'm using also like a parser that doesn't have a live reload when the file changes, and this will recognize. I could go on and on, like explaining every detail I'm trying to do. I guess I just thought it'd be enough if I just said it'd be nice to have an output of individual files, but if that just complicates things too much, I don't think it's worth it.
At least if you have a project that actually has both code and CSS and maybe even assets that are referenced both in the JavaScript and the CSS, it probably does make sense in the context of this tool, from what I can understand, because you would still need it to
I mean, what if there were commands to output all the different like images, or I don't know.
Yeah, but that is what it's doing. So you can choose an output directory, and it will create all those files in that directory.
What I'm thinking just is the problem with Pre-Pros, for example. Like, I think Pre-Pros should be able to just look at a folder output in a directory output rather than only single files. Because the command will output everything that we need. So I'd say don't worry about this for now. I will come back to it. I'm gonna try to message Pre-Pros and see what they say about it.
Yeah, we can probably move on, but I'm just interested, like, your goal, because if you look at the Pre-Pros website, its main tagline is Pre-Pros can compile SAS-less stylus, CoffeeScript and TypeScript out of the box. You can add your own tools with just a few clicks.
Yeah.
In that context, if you think that, oh, you would want to add Imba as a tool, it doesn't really make that much sense, because Imba as a tool also compiles TypeScript. It compiles Imba, it compiles CSS, sort of, but it does it during bundling. So
I just needed this to combine it to be working at the same time with another tool that doesn't have like automatic compiling and stuff. That Pre-Pros will do it for me.
okay.
You one after the other?
to be able to kind of know when one changes, then do it to the other one also. But maybe I'm not trying to do it the right way or the best way. So I will rethink it a little bit.
Cool. So, but please just fill the issue with details about the other tool and kind of the relationship and what you want to do. So it can help us see if it's something that's possible or not.
No problem.
I guess. Cool.
Sindra, I just had sorry, well, very quickly, while we're still on the output and everything, there might be a really easy workaround that I'm missing out. I guess a large part of why I'm talking about the static side is because it'd be cool to use Imba on websites rather than just on apps. Is there like a workaround where you would do it now, even if it's not static, even if it's using a server, just so that if you hit your website /team or /about or something, that it would load up? Could you go into like an example server file that I think you made on an SSR example and just do a component per route sort of thing? Is that what you do if you had to?
It's actually, so using if you can use Imba router, it's actually exactly the same way you would do both routes and rendering on the client.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we have any good examples of that now. We obviously should, but you could imagine writing is just as a client app. If you don't have any event handlers that does a lot of things, like if you want to do event handlers with clicks and stuff, you would need to add your own kind of system for that, because, and now I'm talking about a website where you actually don't include the JavaScript for the site, where you just render the site from the server as you wanted to. That should essentially be exactly the same from the server and the client, even like no changes. If you write an route, like I should definitely find it. I think I have some examples for that, but yeah, it's probably
similar,
it is probably easier than you expect, because there are no difference. The server side will render things exactly the same way. The router will just get the location and URL from the Express or from the HTTP node server.
Yeah.
When you start something and with imba.serve and then supply the node HTTP server as an argument, it will actually inject a node context with the location for the specific request, etc. So the router should work out of the box. But without an example, I'm sure this just sounds weird. So
it might be just an easier, simpler, quicker way in the next few weeks, months, of finding a way of getting it working with sort of a simple site, just rather than. It's basically like a better version of Tailwind you've created. Like it's just so easy and fast to whack up like a design from a website, and just like I've got so many examples of silly small websites I have to build, and it's so fast to code it in Imba because of the CSS. But I guess if you hit a route, you're going to need to have some sort of actual HTML appearing. But that's all.
I'm not sure like which version, the link I sent now in the chat, I'm not sure which version that of Imba it uses. I think it should work with the current version as well. If you start the SSR only file there, then that should work with routes, even if nothing is sent to the client. So you can importing the reset CSS, you can probably remove that. But the whole point is that it will, if you go to the SSR only.imba, Alexander, you will see that it essentially on every route to the server, this is just for a simple example, it will actually create an HTML tree. And as you can see in the body, it also includes an app tag, which is a custom component imported from app.imba. When it renders that, it will actually, if you go into app again, you will see that it has some routes and stuff. And those routes will, so route equals /home, for example, on line 13. when you render that HTML to a string and then return it, it will actually, the routes will work and show and hide based on the location from the request object in the node server. So you don't have to think about it, but this way you could have many nested components and routes. And if you just imagine you were on the client, it should render exactly the same way on the server. But when you want to add like client-side event handlers and do stuff on the client as well, then it becomes more difficult because you will want to probably include some of the components in the client-side bundle, or you will want to wake up some stuff after the page is loaded. We do something like that on Scrimba, but we don't have a really good best practices way of doing it right now, at least not with examples.
Thank you.
But
that's helpful. Seriously, that makes a lot of sense.
So, Sindre, have you tested this against the latest alpha? I can see here it says the last one was from 16th January.
So I haven't, but
it would be good to do so. I can do that later on and just report issues if there are any.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
It was working under 129.
Nice.
I can try it as well. Let me see.
Yeah, that would just open up, like saying if you need to do some sort of basic site, you could do it, right? It wouldn't be static, but for the sort of speed difference or whatever, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter hugely, but it would be cool to think this
It's
spit out something I could put up on a and have a website.
I tested it now, so it definitely works.
Nice.
Cool.
So I can post it in the yeah.
I'll give it a go as well later.
Are sticky routes and stuff like that working? Last time I tried it.
I don't remember. I think there are some issues. They should work most of the time. They definitely won't work from the server side, like they won't be sticky because you don't have a state. You won't remember that stickiness across static renderings. I think stickish, if it doesn't work, it's actually like bugs that prevents it from working. So
last time I tried the router, it was really buggy.
Yeah,
So,
then it probably is still really buggy. Depends on when you tried it out, but yeah. By the way, I'm not sure what time for the next meeting. The kindergartens have finally expanded their opening hours again, so I could for the next meetings do it at like 2:30 or something instead, if that works better for some of you.
For me, it's totally fine on Tuesdays. If we can keep it on Tuesdays, the time doesn't really matter for me.
Yeah. For me, then Tuesdays and 3:30 would be my choice. No, 2:30.
Peter, you have a raised hand. Do you have a question?
Forgot to lower it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
So is there anything else you can think of right now, or?
Well, I'll ask the question here. Imba 2 support in Scrimba. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's still like the whole client is written in Imba 2 now, not the editor and the actual player, but the rest of the site is written in Imba 2, but not in the version that uses ESBuild, like the new ESBuild with all of that. So obviously we'll get right back to that after the tooling launches and yeah.
But what I meant is being able to make scrims and record with Imba 2.
So that's actually one of the good things about this whole tooling refactoring that I've spent too much time on now, and that's that it will it is also able to run on the web. with auto completions and with diagnostics, including like the TypeScript stuff. So I think it's pretty important for adoption to get that running on Scrimba and possibly on the playground itself on Imba.io. So yeah, that's within reach. It's the tooling now works for that. So earlier it was kind of clunky. We had two completely different toolings, like one for VS Code and one for Monaco, and bringing those together is much simpler for the future. So yeah.
Great. So for reference, I'm discussing with Nathan to do a course.
Yeah.
Probably around a project building an app. And of course, it should be done with Scrimba recording. So
yeah, obviously. So for that, that's a good thing to prioritize then. So for that, we should definitely have the good tooling working in Scrimba, definitely.
Indeed. So that's probably a couple of weeks more of planning and figuring out what to do, and then hopefully starting recording in end of June.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to build persistence into the language itself?
In what way?
Well, so that you could indicate that a variable or something was going to persist across runs, and then automatically have Imba handle saving it out in an appropriate storage mechanism.
So kind of approaching Smalltalk, or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually haven't used Smalltalk a lot, but I think it looks like a really old future of what programming languages should be. And that would definitely be cool to experiment with in the future, but it's kind of a too big scope to start tackling now, I think.
Yeah, I love the Smalltalk image model.
Yeah, it's extremely cool. It's really forward thinking.
Sindra, what about just like also, it's so hard to help you because this is all just mostly you. But like if there's any ways that we can help you, I guess most of the stuff's going to come out, once it's stable, then people can start doing tutorials and talking about it. But if you think of anything, or you want to like write down anything you need help with, or just just let us know, right?
Yeah, I think so. So one obvious thing is that when I get the new tooling out, you will see that most of the new tooling also have auto completions for events and the event modifiers and convenient things like that. And it uses like a generated TypeScript definition file for that. So I would definitely need help with something simple like actually writing documentation for the different things that will show up in the tooling. I know that's not like really technical, but that's one part that I would love help with. So yeah. And obviously other things, but it's just right now it's still at the point where I just need to finish it up.
Would you like a sort of Trello type board of a roadmap type thing, or is that something which puts too much pressure on you, like things that are planned, things that are already started? Is that sort of something that would help the project, or is that just a bit too much?
Yeah, I think it would definitely help. It's just I never find the time to actually get started with that. It never feels like I have head above water in a sense. Now, as again, kindergartens have opened more up and things are starting to calm down at home, I think I will have more time going forward. But obviously there are other things I need to work on as well.
The community could maybe help with that, like set up a board and try and centralize sort of the roadmap or something, maybe.
Yeah, what I'm afraid of is that it's if you don't really go into that with a lot of focus and attention, it often just ends up as yet another Trello-like board with some scattered issues and nothing that really makes that much sense.
Okay.
Just a few days ago, I read up on I follow the roadmap for TypeScript, and they have a pretty nice simple roadmap on, I think it's on the wiki on GitHub actually, where I definitely think we could write something like that. But the problem is that, to be honest, I don't really know right now what parts are the most important going forward. Like a static site generator, I wouldn't be comfortable just throwing it out that static site generation should be on the roadmap for version this or that. So right now I'm just trying to get the beta.
Okay, maybe we can have a look again in a month or two or something.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely makes sense when we release officially and the community becomes bigger and yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, do we have a sample htaccess file somewhere so that people wouldn't have to type the port number when they're having URLs for our Imba server-side app?
Are you talking about for local development or?
No, I'm talking for, say you're on a hosting provider, you have the Imba server running and the Imba server for your website is going to be on port 3000, and you wouldn't want the user of the website to have to be hitting it on port 3000. You'd want them to just be coming in on the standard HTTP port. So could we have an access file demo showing how to automatically route that over so that regular URLs without the port number would be tossed to the Imba server to render those pages?
Yeah, I've usually used Nginx or something for that, not htaccess files. You could start it just on the correct port. It does also support, like if you have HTTPS certificates and stuff, you could, if you have your own your Imba servers running, you can, I think we may even have some examples of that, but you could use
yeah, because I'm on a shared hosting provider, so they're already using the standard web port for Apache or
but
Nix,
how?
and then,
So to be honest, I don't know that much about htaccess files. Are they like generic? Could you use that on that shared hosting provider to actually like magically reroute port 80 to your own port just for your domain?
yeah, it should be able to do that.
Okay.
It'd just be nice to see an example file.
Yeah, since I have no idea how to write that example, but that would definitely be interesting. So could you say the name of the shared hosting provider or?
Yeah, I'm on Namecheap.
Okay.
But
But
they
is
do
that
support
for
htaccess files.
But this is for static sites, right? You don't run an actual Imba server there. This is just for uploading actual files. Or
No, actually, what I want to do, it also supports running Node apps. So since it's running the
okay,
web server for the web portions of the web, and you also want to have an application that's an Imba app that will be running as a Node app, they're using the cPanel for starting it up, and then the Node app winds up running with Express under port 3000 at the same time that their regular web server is hosting static assets on your regular port.
and you're not allowed to actually run the node server itself on port 80 or the public port. Correct?
Exactly. The node
Okay.
server has to be running on port 3000 or some other port, but it can't be running on the standard web server port. Since the web server is
Okay.
already running, it's going to be there regardless.
Yeah.
So I've been able to hit the SSR demo off of port 3000, which is fine, but handing out public URLs explicitly mentioning port 3000 is going to look a little bit hinky to the average web browser who doesn't understand these things. And you really want them to just be typing in what looks like a static page's URL and then get that shunted over to the server.
But I have to believe that Namecheap actually has the system for this, because it can't be like any node application that runs on Namecheap then will have to have some sort of configuration file that redirects the port correctly, doesn't it?
Well, I guess they're
No,
just assuming that the user is going to be using the htaccess file for that.
Okay.
So all
yeah.
the Namecheap knows is, we can let you launch your Node app under whatever port you want, as long as it's not the standard browser port.
Mm.
And then it's up to you to figure out the htaccess configuration file. They don't have a demo file showing that because that's getting too into the programming weeds, and they don't deal with helping you with programming problems, only with helping you with generic hosting problems.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but
Peter, this sounds like is something you can resolve configuring your web server. So maybe you could open up an issue on GitHub, and then I can try to create an example for you. But yeah, I think we have to wrap it up.
Yeah, because it
now.
just should be a standard HT access file once we figure out what the configuration looks like, and then everybody could use that. And
but I think that configuration, before we move on, I think that configuration should be very easy, because essentially you do want to rewrite everything that comes in on the port
exactly
on that subdomain to the other port. That's because the Imba server will also handle responding to asset requests and stuff. So you don't even want to use the static part for the server, because that's something you will do in your server code. So yeah.
right, because basically what I want to have is just like a subdirectory off of the main site, and everything in the subdirectory would be handed over to the Imba server to deal with.
That's actually, so maybe that could be an issue, that it's difficult now. At least I remember it as being difficult to serve an Imba application on a subdirectory on a URL, because the server doesn't really know about the subdirectory, so the router is confused and the way we serve static assets is confused. If that's the main issue, then I do think we will need some more work to like some actual features, both on the Imba serve command and the router, to make that work correctly, I think. Because that's one of the issues with GitHub pages, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we should probably wrap it up if unless someone has any other important questions now.
Okay, thanks for all the guidance.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being here.
Nice. So next week, 2:30, right? That's a good time for you.
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. Thanks. Have a great week.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.